Hayate sequences, something into nothing and nothing into something. So you know that we already looked at Sam Taylor Wood's moving image, still life, where we watched over a period of 4 or 5 minutes how a plate of fruit decays and moulds into something other than what it started as. We also noticed when we were watching that the forms themselves become actually just as beautiful. So they move from being recognizable forms through a process of disintegration and decay into something that has its own beauty. And that's a theme I want to keep returning to in today's topic. So, Sam Taylor Wood. If you haven't already, I do want you to try and embed the still life moving image onto your still life page on your websites. The link's on the screen now. I'm not going to watch it with you again right now, but I do think it's something you should return to again and again, and actually it's part of your task this week to compare it to something else. So Sam Taylor Wood, she's now called Sam Taylor Johnson. She was born in 1967, so she is a living artist, and she's from the UK. And the comparison you're going to make is with this person, Duane Michals, also a living artist, but a lot older than Sam Taylor Wood, born in 1932 in the USA, a really prolific photographer. And the photographs you can see here are a sequence called The Dream of Flowers. Now, on the surface, perhaps, there's not really very much to link it with what we could see in Taylor Wood's work. However, I would argue that they're actually the same in principle, where we start out with something that's recognizable, and we move into something that, though recognizable, has transformed through a process of like a symbolic decay. There's definitely something in death about flowers and flowers shrouding the identity of the model. When you look for Duane Michals online, please do type in the specific title, otherwise you'll be sifting through hundreds of images that have got nothing to do with this particular topic. As I said, he was is a very prolific photographer, photographing over many years. I want you to think about the subtitle from today, something into nothing and nothing into something. When we look at a sequence, I would say that what we're looking at, something sequential, follows a rule of time. So time is passing in sequence. In this sequence, time is passing, and what we see is the inhibition of regular form, so that would be the face, and a sense that we instead gradually see another form or forms in the shapes of those flowers. Sam Taylor Wood is looking at us starting with a bowl or a plate of fruit and then moving into a scene of total decay, which could be considered quite chaotic. There are values at both the start and the finish for both artists. And even something that's a lot less symbolic seeming can still have its own symbolic language. So this sequence of an apple being eaten away until we get right down to its pips is just as important at that moment of nothing as it is at the beginning where it is something. And likewise, when we think about something, we're thinking about an apple. It's kind of nothing to an apple because it's so ordinary. So we could argue that this actually is going from nothing, the apple, kind of boring, into something, which are the seeds. A lot less likely to be photographed in many ways, but also symbolically full of potential for new growth. So I'd like you to think about the question, is this sequence taking us from something into nothing or from nothing into something? I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I think there could be a lot of discussion about why something at the end of its life, for example, or the end of its existence, is just as meaningful, maybe more so, than the thing at the beginning. So your task this week is to make a sequence of images in which a fruit, like an apple, gets eaten away or cut away to nothing. Ideally, you would have 9 images if you want to put them in a grid, but you could also present as many images as you want just in a line. You must be strict with visual conventions, so always occupying the same space within the frame. And you have a choice of shooting either against a black background and using shadow with a single source light, or using that bright white style there where we've got minimal shadow. I've put on there that you should be photographing in colour, but of course you can photograph in black and white if you would prefer. And also, for your websites and alongside this sequence, I would like you to compare the work of Sam Taylor Wood in her still life moving image with the sequence The Dream of Flowers by Duane Michals. Of course, everything goes on a new page in your website, so you decide on the title for that. And as before, if I was doing a demo in school, this is what I would be showing you. So you can see my at-home setup. I've just got a tall stool and a short stool. The short stool's got a bedside lamp on it. I've got an apple and I've got some black fabric that I've draped. I've photographed that apple as I've eaten parts of it away, making sure that as I've photographed, I've always been photographing from exactly the same distance, same vantage point. The distance between me or my camera and that object is always the same. Therefore, the shape, even though it diminishes because I'm eating the apple, it gets smaller because I'm eating it. However, it stays the same in terms of its actual compositional size within the frame. You'll see also there that I have played around with the idea that the black background is total. So there's no disrupting shadow in the background. There's only shadow used to define the shape of the apple or the shapes within the apple as it gets eaten away. That means technically contrast is high, brightness is low. I also, because I was shooting in colour and I wanted the colour really to pop against the black, I elevated or raised the saturation. If I go back to this one, you can see there that there's hardly any shadow. That is going to be difficult to do unless you're using probably ambient light. So this is rigged in a studio. You would be doing it probably in daylight, where the light is as diffused as possible so you get minimal shadow. Okay, and for stretch and challenge, this takes a little bit of forethought. So you use a half-eaten rotten fruit and photograph against a black background with single source lighting. I think your results here could be really beautifully symbolic. These notions of something that is partial, is decaying, is dying, or maybe is dead, but also in its own right has its own language of beauty, it has its own visual countenance, it has things that are still meaningful, something so ordinary. So that's what you're doing this week. Just to go back to your task again, make a sequence of images in which a fruit gets eaten or cut away to nothing, presented either in a line or as a grid. Of course, if it's a grid, 9 images is perfect. I want you to be really strict with the visual conventions set out for you in this task. So always occupying the same space within the frame, shooting in colour, but I've said you can also shoot in black and white. You can choose either bright white lighting conditions, looks like that, or dark lighting conditions with single source light, which looks like that. And I also want you to do a little bit of research this week and write a comparison analysis between Sam Taylor Wood's still life moving image and the sequence of photographs, The Dream of Flowers by Duane Michals, and all of that will go on your websites. Your websites, for most of you, look absolutely excellent. I'm really, really pleased and impressed with what you've been doing. I like that, for example, Ben has put his setup photograph, like my photograph showing the scene, on his webpage. I think that's kind of useful because it shows how much you refine what you do when you choose to look rather than just setting something up for the sake of it. It's also interesting for me to see how you go about making the photographs that I see as an end product. So I will look forward to meeting with you next week. That's your stretch and challenge once again. On our Teams, we've got this Loom video, we've got the starter task from today, and we've also got the recording of the actual live lesson, if anyone wants to watch that back. So good luck, Year 10, and I'll see you next time.